Could you please state your name and today's date?
My name is Samuel H. Schulman. Today's date is Friday, the 12th of September, 2003.
How old are you?
Just turned 75.
Where were you living before World War II began?
Before World War II began, I was born in the United States in 1928, and my father passed away in 1932. So we were living, I was born in Terre Haute, Indiana, and the whole family was living in Terre Haute, Indiana. When my father passed away, my mother wanted to be with her own family, who at that time happened to be in France, hadn't come from Poland. So she took me to France, and that's where I was raised until after World War II, when we came back to the United States.
How many languages do you speak?
Oh, about 4, and a smattering of a few phrases in other languages.
Like what?
Well, English, which is not my best, Yiddish, which is my mother language, the main language, French, of course, 100% better than the French, Hebrew, and Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. I could get along with it.
What army did you serve with during World War II?
I did not serve in any army, but I did help out the French resistance. We were in hiding in the what was called the Free Zone. I was one of the few Americans that got caught in World War II and couldn't get back to the States. And we just weathered out the storm.
Are you Jewish?
Yes, I am.
Did you experience any anti-Semitism before World War II?
Not on me personally. Yes, well, although I was raised in an Orthodox environment, but I went to the French school system, and I assimilated with the French, and at home I assimilated with the Hasidim. So, was part of both culture without giving one away to the other. And I personally never, every Gentile that I encountered was always friendly to me, helpful in everything. So I can't, but I did encounter and saw anti-Semitic acts throughout my life.
Before sailing on the Exodus, what experience did you have at sea?
Just crossing the Atlantic back and forth as a passenger. Seasick too.
Well, how did you become a part of the Exodus crew?
All right. After World War II, when we came back to Paris, my mother and I, before actually we came back, I went to see how safe it is to get back to Paris after it was liberated. And the only place you could eat were the Zionist soup canteens, or any other soup canteens for returning people, refugees. So I went from one to the other, and I fell into one group of labor Zionists. I enjoyed their food, and I also enjoyed their company, as opposed to other people. And so when we came back actually to Paris, I said I want to go on to Palestine with those people. Now keep in mind this was 1945, and we came back, so for the period of 1 year, I saw these people practically every day. And organizations, you sing, you go on hikes, you camp, and you bond, And of course the whole idea was to go to Palestine and set up a kibbutz. So my mother prevailed on me to come back to the United States and see the family. So we came back, and within a few days I started contacting the organization here, And by the by the middle of 1946, we came back in February 1946. By the middle of 1946, I already had a contact with the Echalutz, who was the so-called hiring agent for illegal immigration seamen. And they were desperate to get anybody who was willing to go. So I said I want to go to Palestine. I expected to go as a passenger, as naive as I was, to rejoin the group. And so on Thanksgiving of 1946, I was asked to come to Baltimore. They gave me enough money for the train and told me where to go and what pier, Pier 6 on Pratt Street in Baltimore. And I went there, and all I saw, asked people, where's that ship, the passenger ship? They all, seamen from other big merchant ships were just saying, we don't know anything about President Warfield, doesn't sound familiar. But he said, look, there's that derelict at the end of the pier there. There's no life to it, no heat, nothing. So maybe that's us. There's a few people standing in front. Maybe those guys know. So I went there, and they said, yes, we are going to Palestine by way of Oklahoma. Big jokers. So I didn't dawn to me that Oklahoma is landlocked. And they said, nah, don't worry, we're going to China. Say that, come on aboard. And there was nothing there. So there was a Captain Ash, who happened to be at the time there. He was the port captain. And he gave me money, and he says, go to the Arundel Hotel, get yourself a room, and there are other guys there. Actually, I was the sixth one that was aboard. And we stayed about a month, and each day we would go and clean up the ship and had some people come and work, outside people. And then finally, we all moved aboard. And that's how I got to the President Warfield. Without what happened later on is just history, but at that time we had no idea of what we were getting into. And we saw many smaller ships coming by, even at one point that I requested to be transferred, but we weren't going anywhere. And these little ships, smaller ships that would take 1,500 refugees, 2,300 refugees, would be departing for Europe to do on the job. And we're sitting in port doing nothing, So that's how I got to the Exodus.
How old were you at this time?
Well, if I born 1928, 46, about 18 years. I just turned 18.
Okay. Do you know...
By the way, they wouldn't take anyone younger than 18 anyway.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Do you know why the British opposed Jewish immigration to Palestine?
Well, as far as the political scene is concerned, from their point of view, if they were to set up or allow a Jewish immigration to Palestine, which had also an Arab population, there were clashes before that, since the turn of the century, of the 20th century, in the 19th century, of the Jewish immigration that trickled from Eastern Europe and established settlements. And the Arab at first, of course, they resented it. Then they sold them land to these pioneers, and then they tried to take it away because it's two different cultures. And of course, they didn't believe the return of Jews to their homeland. As far as they were concerned, you lost it several thousand years ago, 2,000 years ago, and we're here now. That's our land, not yours. So the British were playing both sides. The pressure on one side from a Jewish organization on the British. Some British politicians were favorable. As you can see, the Balfour Declaration and other thing, until the white paper came and limited immigration in order to favor the Arabs.
Were you aware of all of this at that time when you were 18?
Not really. I mean, some of it, yes, through indoctrination, the Zionist movement.
Okay. When did you officially board the Exodus, and then when did it set sail?
Well, officially I joined on Thanksgiving 1946. The actual boarding of everyone was a month later when the ship was ready and fit for living conditions.
Who comprised the crew? Like what nationalities?
Basically, we're all U.S. citizens, although some were born overseas. Like we had one that Roger Roffet, who was born in Egypt, but the family came to the United States, and he joined. So, and he's still in Israel now. So, there was Teddy Vardy, a good friend of mine. I mean, they all were good friends of mine eventually. But because we're 45 people, you gravitate towards some who you feel closer to and try to be friendly with others, And Teddy Vardy was one. Used to be Rosenfeld. He's no longer with us. And he was born in Hungary and brought to the United States as an infant. So there were many people who were born overseas, but actually they didn't know anything about their backgrounds, having come to the United States and grown up in the United States for all practical purpose. They were U.S. citizens.
Was everyone Jewish?
Except one, which was John Grohl, who was a Protestant minister who came along to witness whatever the illegal immigration, and who subsequently was an eloquent speaker for the Jewish cause.
What you indicated that they gave you money to travel to Baltimore.
Yes.
To take this trip. Were you considered volunteers or?
Volunteers.
Everyone was.
We never asked for. Whatever stipend or I don't know if I would call it pay, but allowance was not decided by us. It was decided by the organization who was footing the bill. I remember the first money we got was $100 a week, and $100 a week in 1946 was a hell of a lot of money when everything was a nickel. My wife still ribs me about the nickel business, and but that didn't last too long. The $100 also included we had to take care of being in the hotel. I mean, we paid the hotel, which at that time I believe was $5 or $10 a week for a room. And also we had to supply to feed ourselves because the ship was not ready to. We were not living aboard. We just came to work and clean up and tidy up the ship. But after a month, we went aboard, and our pay dropped to $40 a week, pay or stipend, and then we got nothing, or whatever we needed. The store aboard would supply us. Whoever wanted cigarette, candies, you would get so much a week, clothing, and whatever necessary, soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, all this was supplied free of charge. So our money went down to almost zero. And that's it. That's how we, actually, all volunteers,
Okay. Do you know, or did you know where the ship came from, its origination?
The ship was a U.S. ship, a ferry boat was actually built in 1928, the year I was born. It belonged to the Warfield family, of which, what's her name? Wallace Simpson was one of the nieces. It's just ironic. Later on, I found out that the connection with the ship, and it used to ply the Chesapeake Bay between Baltimore and Norfolk, overnighters, and was during Prohibition, so they once they were out at sea, everything let loose. They were drinking like mad until they got back into port. And then they would go to the return trip on the same thing. People could afford this kind of a life. Thereafter, during World War II, it became a hospital ship, went over to England, and during the D-Day, it was a hospital ship ferrying the people back and forth to England, and then after World War II, it was sent back to the United States and put away for scrap metal, and was rescued by a group of donors for the purpose, who were buying ships, and they wanted bigger and bigger ships, and this was the one available. It was looked around, and instead of going to the scrap yard, they rescued it and fixed it up. How much the cost for it was, I don't know. I don't know who the donors were at that time. I remember there were a few people, but I don't remember the names. I don't know what area they came from, whether it was Baltimore people or other people from other areas, Jewish people who donated in order to get those ships. Not only the President Warfield, who subsequently became the Exodus 47, but also all the other smaller ships. That's about it.
Okay. Under what flag did it sail?
It sailed under the Honduras flag.
Okay. At the time, was it a secret, or did people know what the purpose of the ship was for?
Well, it was a secret except for the British intelligence.
What ports did you stop en route when you were on your way to pick up the refugees?
Well, before that, we almost didn't make it. From Baltimore, we went on a trial run and almost sank. So we came back to Norfolk. They pumped out. That was really funny. I mean, it's funny now, but not those. We were almost ready to abandon and let it sink. And we came back. Navy, Coast Guard cutter stood by to ask us if they want to take us aboard, because we were very low in water, and we said no, we're going to try to make it. Just stand by, and we made it to Norfolk. They pumped out the water, they patched up the leaks and the holes. Then we went to Camden, picked up some stuff. Then we went for another trial, came back, and then we were okay, just see if it's seaworthy, and then we finally left, and that was in April of 1947. So you can see from November, well, all right, December, January, February, March, April, 5 months we just stood around and until we are ready to actually leave for Europe.
Okay, so and you were going to Palestine because tell me why you were going.
Because I wanted to rejoin my group in order to build a kibbutz over there.
Okay. Were you part of the Palmach or any of the other organizations?
No, at that time, no.
Okay. How were the refugees contacted to meet the ship?
That was done, but by another part of the Haganah, which brought together from the DP camps in Europe and going over mountains or through rail or trucks would bring him at a certain appointed time to the port of embarkation. Now, most of the people were younger people. We tried not to, they tried not to have elderly people. The whole idea was to bring, we were putting pressure at that time on Britain to let go of Palestine. and therefore we needed young people fighters. We didn't need elderly people or very young people. So that's how they were brought over to the ships at whatever port of embarkation was chosen at the time.
And what was that for the ship, for the Exodus? Where were they to board ship?
We boarded in Sète. That's in the southern part of France.
Okay. And when did the refugees board the ship?
That was in July. I don't have exact dates now.
Okay. How many were there? Refugees?
For about 4,500 people.
Okay. And how many were children?
I have no idea. No, my job was strictly seamanship, as opposed to some who became what they call in charge of different sections of the ship. Some of the seamen became did some other job, dropped the seamanship bit, and started being in charge of the refugees, like section chiefs telling them when to come on deck, because not all the people can come on deck at the same time. Also making sure that the same amount of people on one side of the ship would be on the other, not to tip, if you put too many people on one side, you can see the level in the wheelhouse that the ship is listing to one side, so we had to get so many hundreds on that side, or get them back even.
What was the condition of the refugees when they came on board the ship?
As far as I can see, the condition, you mean physically? Well, keep in mind this was already about almost 2 years after the end of World War II, and having been in the camps and fed and indoctrinated to come back to life, so to speak. So I would say the refugees just want to get out of Europe after World War II. They had enough with Europe. Whoever survived in the camps and those that survived in the cities all wanted to leave Europe, whether it was the United States, Australia, New Zealand, South America, Canada. It didn't have to be necessarily Palestine. I think Palestine, I'm sorry to say, was probably the last on the list of people wanting to go there. But whichever avenue was open, they would take it.
Were there any difficulties or dangers once you were out on open sea?
Well, before the refugees, there's always danger at sea. Whether you're loaded with cargo, you're loaded with people. You never know what the sea will entail. And we had a wonderful crossing from the United States to Europe. And once we got the people aboard, the sea was smooth. The only danger would have been if the British would have fired a torpedo into the ship. The minute we left port, there were already several ships following us, of which was the cruiser Ajax, which was the flagship of the Admiral of the Mediterranean Fleet for the British. So I think we had about 6 or 7 ships following us on both sides, at a distance, of course, and telling us where are you going, and so on, and some of the boys would play back, we're going to China or all thing. And the other danger where we had a few casualties. I think one casualty that I know is that a woman died in childbirth. The child was survived, and we had to bury it at sea. We could not carry a body with us we didn't know how long we're going to be out there. And that was the only thing. And seasickness among people And we had doctors from the people themselves who would help out. That's about it.
What was the mood like on
The mood was upbeat. I mean, everybody, they were happy that they were out of Europe. You, one can understand if you're cooped up in a room, you're glad when the door opens up and you're out. And same thing was for the people living in the camps. Although they could go out to town, they had no reason going into the towns from the camp. So their problem was psychologically they were still confined. And the idea was to get out of there. And when the occasion presented itself, they were told, are you ready? You're on the list. They were glad to go, pick up the few items that they carried with them and leave. And hope that when they get to where they were going, that everything will be fine. Because we were going into the unknown, and they were going onto the unknown too. They didn't know what the future will bring for them, or for the crew members ourselves. We didn't know what will entail.
How long was the trip expected to last?
I think about takes at the speed of our ship probably about what we did, about 3 days, 4 days.
And that's, you had supplies on board?
Yeah, we had enough for that. Yes, we had huge kettles for feeding people. That was no problem. We had sweet water, and we had no problem as far as that's concerned. What would have happened beyond that, I have no idea.
You mentioned the British coming alongside you once you started out. Was that the first point that you spotted British ships, or had they been following you beforehand?
Not when we didn't have the refugees.
Okay. What were the initial plans once you reached Palestine?
Was to beach the ship on the shores, I don't know what area, and then there would be Palestinian Jews waiting with lorries to take him and then distribute him in different areas of the Jewish Palestine that time, and melt into the population.
I'm going to now ask you to talk about what transpired between the Exodus and the British. Can you first tell me when you first realized that there was going to be a serious problem?
I personally, at that time, I was not in on anything but whatever I could see on deck. I still was at the wheel, 4 hours on, 8 hours off, just as a seaman. And I had gotten off my watch and was sleeping when I heard at the wee hours of the morning, I was jolted. So without warning, two little destroyers came along and lifted up, and then we bounced down. Then we know that the problem, and then everybody started yelling, and the crew started, everything started fighting, you know. And so we fought for several hours with potatoes, canned goods. We threw overboard several of the British commandos. Murray Aronoff and I let loose a wooden raft on one of the ships that came alongside, and it really smacked into the wheelhouse, and the captain was cursing us like mad, and he had to back away, and he was out of business, so to speak. They had to go to port, and that ship took several months to fix up, until we told there's no point of fighting anymore. I mean, one of my The officer that was on watch, Bill Bernstein, was killed. He refused to surrender the wheelhouse, so they clubbed him, and he died in the hospital. He never recovered. And Bill Millman refused to surrender. He got hit with a pistol in his jaw. That required several operations through the years, but he's okay now. And then there was a Jewish kid that was looking through the gratings, and one commando just shot him right there, 15-year-old. You know, I mean, their side, when they came aboard, they were scared because their lives were in danger too, the commandos. So, you know, they took any precaution to prevent bodily harm to themselves.
Did the crew or the refugees have any weapons?
No, we never used any weapons except potatoes and canned goods, which can hurt.
How far out were you from land? Was the exodus?
As far as what I can remember, we were in international water. How far out, I don't know.
You mentioned that when you were told to surrender or to give up the fight, who gave that order? Do you know?
That was probably Yossi Hamburger, whose now name is Yossi Harel. He was the commander of the operation. Not the captain, but the commander.
Okay, and the commander, where was he?
He was aboard our ship.
He was aboard the
Yeah.
ship. What damage was done to the ship?
Well, like they said, it came in like a nutcracker would have destroyed a nut, you know. The good feature is that this ferry boat, the seagoing ferry boat, had a steel girder around it. And any ships that came along and tried to lift us up, after they backed away, the whole side was slit open almost. So the British, I wouldn't say lost several ships, but several ships were damaged, and they could not do it again. They didn't realize that steel, it was a quite heavy steel bumper around the middle of the ship.
How did the passengers react when this?
Well, they fought alongside. We had groups that, as you see, these youngsters were organized into groups of their affiliation, and the leader would give the order to go ahead and hit here, or listen to the crewman what to do, and so on.
You had mentioned the British were, when they came alongside, where were you going? Can you tell me about the exchange of words that was going back and forth?
No, I have no idea what.
Okay.
I mean, of course, they were cursing back and forth or yelling at one another, but that was not my part. That was part of the officers and some other people who were yelling, but I have no idea about that.
Can you describe the transfer of the refugees from the Exodus to the British ships?
To the prison ships?
Yeah,
yes.
I wanted to ask you what kind of ships they were.
All right, when we came in, after all resistance ceased, the British took control of the ship and steered it into Haifa. And then we were transferred, and each group were told of the crewman to go with a certain ship or so. And some were told to hide. There were hiding places in the ship, and that they will be taken out the next day by a cleaning crew, a Jewish Palestinian cleaning crew that will be given clothing to match them, and they'll come out, and that would end false identities, and they would go down. However, that was not in my case, and most of the crewmen went with the people. And so when we got down on the docks, we first went through the DDT experience of being, so that in those days they used DDT for any purpose. and then they would take us along the pier, and there were 3 ships anchored. One was the Empire Rival, the Ocean Vigor, and the Renamint Park. I was on the Ocean Vigor, and it just made you go up, and when that one was full, you went to the next one, and then they pulled away. We thought we'll be going to Cyprus, but Mr. Bevan, who was Prime Minister at the time in Britain, decided as a lesson to ship back to Europe. So we all went back to Europe, to France actually, and anchored off Sète.
Do you know how many crew members and refugees were injured during this time or killed?
Refugees, I don't know, but crew members, there were about 6 or 7.
Okay. Were any people taken off at Haifa and not put on a prison ship, but...
Yes, some of the crew members. One was John Grohl, the Protestant minister. Cy Weinstein, who was 3rd mate, and Bernie Marks, which was 1st mate. I don't know of anyone else that I can think of right now.
Okay. You said that then you set sail back to France.
Right.
How did France react to this?
Well, France refused to let us land there. So we sweated that out. It was very hot that July of '47. So we waited there, and each day there would be small ships coming alongside and supplies with food and give us encouragement. Do not despair, do not land, do not come down. And then I was told by the Haganah to come down in France because of my fluency in French. And with a few other of the crew members, for no other reason that they decided they had enough. And some very sick refugees. And we brought to a hospital, of which the Haganah took us out the next day, sent us to a rest camp along the Riviera for a short period. And all we knew is that subsequently the ships went on to Germany. Now, anything about Germany, and I tried to get some from my crewmates, they wouldn't talk about it. They said it was a terrible experience. Probably Frank Levine probably gave a resume of what happened there.
Okay. You mentioned ships came alongside with food and encouragement. Whose ships were they?
From the Jewish agency or the French Jewish community organizations that sent along, and of course reporters were there. No one could board the ship, but we could bring aboard. They permitted us to bring some food aboard.
And how long did this last?
I think they were there for about, I can't remember. I rather not say whether it was 2 or 3 weeks or a month or whatever it is, because I don't know the history. Once I got off the ship, my job with the Exodus was finished, and the job with other ships started. So
I wanted to ask you what you did then after that.
After that, I was asked by Shola Lazarov. She was the daughter of a Lazarov, a very famous Jew in Israel, and she was at that time the head of the DP camps of southern France, and she was being recalled to Palestine, and she asked me to take over the job. I said I'm not really crazy about it, but I was on good terms with the prefect of the Bouches-du-Rhône, which is the district of Marseille, and this was outside Marseille, was Saint-Jérôme. And so I accepted, but it was one terrible month of which I had no sleep whatsoever. It was a 24-hour job, And then at the end of the month, I asked the Haganah to relieve me, either send me back to the United States or send me to take another ship. So they decided to send me to Venice to pick up the pan ships.
And when is this? What year are we talking about? Or
We're
month?
talking still 47.
Okay. Okay. And when did you finally finish your tour, if you will, with the Haganah?
That was during one truce in 1949 in Israel.
And then what did you do?
Then I came back to the States.
Do you know what the British did with the Exodus once everybody disembarked?
Well, it was anchored in Haifa along the jetty, and from what I understand, someone came with a torch either they were going to dismantle it or something. Nobody really wanted to keep it as a memento, and so it caught fire. And because it was a wooden ship, except the hull was metal, but so it went up in a puff and sank, and I think it's laying at the bottom of the harbor there.
Do you still keep in touch with any of your crewmates?
Yes,
from the Exodus?
yes, some who are in Israel and some who are here.
Now I'm just going to ask you about how this impacted you. Did your life change because of this experience? Did your perspective on things change because of this experience?
Well, of course, it did have some effect on me. But keep in mind that I went through World War II in Europe. So this was only a continuation of experiences.
What one lesson do you believe people should learn from the Exodus experience specifically?
Gee, you got me there. You got me there. I don't know. Try to help people who are in trouble. I really can't say.
Do you have any special memories you'd like to share for this video, or something specific you'd like people to know about this event?
Well, if I have to do it again, I would do it again. Let's put it this way. I have no regret. I hope that the people that were brought to Israel don't have it against us for bringing them there as opposed to bringing them to other countries. And it was a wonderful experience.
I just thought of another question. Have you, over the years, come across people that were refugees on that ship while you were?
Only at a reunion in the 1980s of the illegal immigration, of the Mahal actually, not only illegal immigration, but also of all the volunteers that helped in the creation of the State of Israel at that time, from the United States and other volunteers. People came from all over Israel to meet us, and some remembered us, you know.
That's nice. Well, thank you for sharing.
Okay, most welcome. Well, you're not